Hey there, welcome back to another video. I'm Baker Betty, and today I want to show you how to prep all of these different types of pans for baking. I'm going to show you the best ways to prep them for different types of baked goods, and I'm also going to show you some tips and tricks for how you can cut your parchment paper so that it fits really nicely into different sizes of pans. So let's get to it. So we're going to start with a really classic sheet pan. Now, there's really not a lot of instances in which you would actually grease your sheet pan. So typically what you're going to be doing for prepping a sheet pan is either lining it with parchment paper, which is my preferred method. Literally, that's all you do. Add a piece of parchment paper, super easy. Or if you prefer, you can use a silicone baking mat. A lot of people really like these because they're reusable and they're kind of a non-stick surface, so it's really easy to clean up. You can just take your baked goods off of it. Your pan is good to go, but I find the silicone baking mats a little bit difficult to clean. They can get kind of greasy, so that's just a personal preference. So really the parchment paper or the silicone baking mat is going to work for most all baking uses that you're going to use a sheet pan or a cookie sheet for. Cookies, biscuits, scones, hand pies, anything like that. Okay, so now let's talk about square or rectangle pans. Now, if you prefer, you can just grease these pans with something like a non-stick spray, or I often like to keep my butter wrappers and then you can just rub the butter wrapper all in the inside of the pan. You do want to really make sure you get down in the corners if you're just going to grease the pan so that whatever you're putting in it releases. However, my preference is to line pans like this with parchment paper. So this works really well for anything like a cake or brownies or quick bread or any kind of like cookie bar type situation, because then you can just pull the parchment out with the whole baked good intact and then you can slice it from there, and it just makes for really easy cleanup. So this technique can be used with any of these rectangle or square pans. I'm going to show you on my square pan here. So you're going to start with a piece of parchment paper that's a little bit wider than your pan all the way around, preferably about an inch wider than all of your pan. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set the pan in the middle and you're going to use your pan as your guide to cut the four corners of the parchment out. Going all the way around, and it doesn't need to be perfect. So once you cut out the four corners, you're going to end up with a piece of parchment that looks like this. And then I like to go ahead and give the pan a quick little spray because that just helps keep the parchment really nice and in place as you're adding your batter or whatever it is you're adding to your pan. And then you're just going to place it in there, and that just makes it sit down in the pan so nicely. You don't have all the crumpled up corners and trying to finagle it in there. And then if you have some like really tall hangover, I usually trim those off so they don't fall over the baked good as it's baking. And that is it for square and rectangle pans. So for round cake pans, I like to line the bottom of the pan with parchment paper and then grease the entire pan so that it releases really easily. Now, if you don't have parchment paper or don't want to use parchment paper, you can just grease the whole pan either with nonstick spray or with butter, and then you can dust some flour inside the pan and kind of tap it around and then tip out the excess flour. That will help it release, but I do think the parchment works a little bit better and I have better luck with it. So to make a parchment round that's going to fit nicely in the bottom of your circular pan, you want to start with a square piece of parchment paper that's bigger than your cake pan. And what you're going to do is you want to fold this in half, bringing the bottom of the paper up to the top. And then we're going to fold it in half again, bringing the right side to the left side. So you have a smaller square now. Okay, so now we want to make a thin triangle, folding it in half this way, and then one more time so that this point stays closed. So this is the open side of your parchment, and then this is the closed side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our pan and put that point that we just created right in the center and use that as our guide to trim our parchment paper. So we're going to just trim off this excess. And then when you unfold this, you have a beautiful circular piece of parchment that should fit nicely into the bottom of your pan. Now sometimes it might be just a little bit too big, depending on how accurately you trimmed. If it is, you can fold it right back up. I'm gonna trim mine just a tiny bit more so it sits a little bit nicer. And that looks pretty good. So again, I am going to go ahead and grease my pan. I'm gonna give it a really good spray all over so the parchment sits really nicely in the bottom, but that also makes sure that the sides are oiled so that the cake will release. And now our round cake pan is ready for its batter. So I do want to quickly address a tube pan. Now, if you aren't familiar with tube pans, they look kind of similar to a bundt pan, but they have a straight side all the way around, and typically the bottom comes out of them. So typically a cake that's baked in a tube pan is going to be something like an angel food cake or a chiffon cake. Both of these types of cakes are egg foam cakes, meaning we whip air into the egg whites in order to help lift and leaven them. And because they're egg foam cakes, fat is the enemy for whipped egg whites. Fat causes egg whites to deflate. So you actually don't really want to prep this kind of pan at all. Preferably you want to have a non-stick pan if you do have a tube pan. And what you're going to do is just put your batter in it without greasing it or lining it at all. And the cake is going to climb the sides of the pan, and that's what's going to help it get really nice and tall. And then to release it, you're going to really gently run like a butter knife around the outside, and then that's how you're going to release it. So for anything baked in a tube pan, typically you're just not going to prep it at all. Now, in contrast to our tube pan, I have a bundt pan, which it typically has a pretty intricate design on the inside. And for this type of pan, we need to prep it very, very well so that we make sure our cake releases and maintains that really pretty design. Now, my favorite way to prep a bundt pan is to use one of these non-stick sprays that's specifically for baking. It has some flour mixed into the spray. So when you spray it, it's gonna give it a really, really nice non-stick coating. Now, if you don't have one of these non-stick sprays that already has the flour mixed in, my second favorite way to prep a bundt pan is to just use a regular non-stick spray. Or if you don't have a spray, you can melt some butter or shortening or just use oil, and you can use a pastry brush to brush it all over. But you wanna make sure you get the oil really coated in all of the nooks and crannies. So don't be shy with it. And then what you're going to do is dust it with some flour. Or if you're making a chocolate cake, you can use cocoa powder. Now, I really like these dredge shakers. They're really helpful for doing things like dusting flour. But if you don't have one of these, just add some flour. We're going to dump the excess out. But you can see as I'm doing this, it's not quite coating all of the places in the pan we need it to. So we're going to kind of tip this around and tap it so that the flour really gets in all of the nooks and crannies and up the sides. And take your time with this, because for something like a bundt cake, it's really difficult to get it out of the pan if it's not greased properly. And it's really easy to lose your beautiful design. So then you're just going to tap out the excess. And then you can go ahead and add your cake batter. And our last pan type is a muffin tin or a cupcake tin. Now you can just spray this with nonstick spray if you like, if you don't have parchment paper or paper liners. I personally try to avoid that at all costs because I think they're so difficult to clean if you do that. So my preference for prepping these pans is to use paper cupcake liners. They're super cheap, very easy. It makes it really easy to pop them out of the pan and to transport them and share them. However, if you don't have paper liners and you do still want liners in your pans, you can make a liner yourself. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut some parchment paper in squares. I would say these are maybe about 5 by 5 inches. And you want to find a glass that is about the diameter of the bottom of your cupcake tin. So like that. What you're going to do is you're going to turn the glass over and take one of your squares of parchment paper, center it over your glass, and then you're just going to take your hand and wrap it around and push it down over the glass. And that is going to give you this really rustic, cute paper liner. Now they don't sit in the tin as well when there's no filling in them, but once you add the filling, they'll sit down in the tin and it makes for a really, really cute cupcake or muffin liner. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a video. And feel free to leave me any questions you have down in the comment section. I always try my best to answer those. And I'll see you next time. Bye.